Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scum Home Podcast. I'm excited because tonight is our last off-season episode of the summer. Granted, we are still a little over a month away from the return of Houston Cougar football and a couple weeks from the official start of the 2026-27 sports season. But everything from here on the calendar will involve at least some kind of looking ahead to Cougar sports, or once the calendar turns September, Bobby, the wonderful almost 9 straight months of real on-field actual sports to talk about and think about and experience in our lives. And this is not a knock on the offseason. I've really enjoyed the stuff that we've done over the summer, our annual Oscar Awards. My co-host here is awesome 20 points to change U of H history episode that we did, the Kelvin Sampson era men's basketball player draft with co-host Emeritus Dustin we did last week, our biennial off-topic summer Formula One episode. I've enjoyed all of it. It's been very, very fun. And I take specific pride in the two of us doing this just about 52 weeks per year. But we do this podcast because we love talking actual sports. And so it can be nothing but good news that we are about to be here in a month where we actually talk Houston Cougar sports again. Bobby, I've monologued enough. You and I were both on the road last week, but we're back at our home bases. How are we doing, friend?
Good, man. Super excited to talk Cougar sports with you. A little season finale that we have here before we jump into a new season of Cougar talks and previews and ramblings and all of that. So really excited to end the season well here, man.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke about doing a cliffhanger, but it doesn't really work because in 6 days, it's going to be you, me, and Dustin back. And, you know, like 6 days is some time for suspense, but not the same as when we were, remember when we were younger and they used to put on, I hate to do the old guy nostalgia thing.
Who shot Mr. Burns?
Who shot Mr. Burns, The Simpsons, who shot JR for our parents' generation previously. Doesn't hit the same when it's about a week's time in between the old season stopping in.
That's something we've lost with streaming. That's something you lose with streaming is now you can just binge everything and there's no cliffhanger. Exactly.
But we will spare you any more over 35 nostalgia here and get to the podcasting. We'll mention at the top here, like I always do, if you like the work that we do here on a weekly basis, talking about the Houston Cougars, even during the deep, dark heart of the offseason, you could support us if you don't do so already by going to patreon.com/shpodcast. And also, you can leave us a free 5-star review if you enjoy the Cougar talk you hear from us on a weekly basis. Go to your podcast app of choice, give us a 5-star review, tell the world what you like about what we do here, talking about the Cougars, because it really does help us and helps get our little podcast out of our niche and into the larger world. We'll mention some podcast business here too, is that we're officially an independent. We've always been an independent podcast, so I use the officially independent here very loosely, but you've probably noticed no longer doing spots for the 10-12 network because we are no longer part of the 10-12 network. Nothing acrimonious there. We just, I think, looked at what they wanted to do long term, and it seemed to be a pivot away from podcasting. And if there's anything we don't have an intention of pivoting away from, it's doing this weekly audio show. We like what we do. We're not trying to game an algorithm. We're not trying to pivot to video here. We put on a weekly Houston Cougar show, and we enjoy doing it. And so we decided we're just gonna be the Scott Holland Podcast, presented by nobody other than the many people in our life that support us via our Patreon, patreon.com/shpodcast, and the wonderful people who have supported us beyond the Patreon in pursuing what we love here, doing this here podcast. So, Bobby, I believe that is all the podcast business, unless I forgot something here at the top.
No, I think that's it. Just something that we decided to make that decision. We just, like you said, there were some discussions about maybe going to video, doing things like that, and that's certainly not something either one of us really wants to do. Because as somebody who has done video content before, there's a lot more to it than just getting on camera and doing that. Like, you have to do a lot of editing, graphics, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of time and effort that really comes into that. And to be honest, Sam and I just like talking Cougar sports and all the stuff that goes with the editing of a video and things like that. Like, we just, I don't know, it just didn't
Doing
seem
stuff to
like,
make YouTube not bury your video or
yeah,
have it show
yeah.
up on
And I've
people's
tried it
pages.
before with other content and that kind of stuff. And then we wanted to just talk about different things than what it seemed 10-12 always talked about a lot. But no hard feelings or anything over there to those guys. I hope 10-12 does well. Heck, I'll probably still be listening to some of their shows just to see what our opponents and what our conference members are kind of up to and talking about.
No doubt. So we'll lead tonight with the biggest news that has broken in the past week since we got in front of microphones and talked about the Cougs, and that is consensus 4-star combo guard Oneal Delancy from Montverde Academy in Florida, committing to Houston Cougar men's basketball. Delancey's a top 50 player in the 2027 class by the various recruiting services, with his specific rating in the class falling somewhere between 40 and 52, depending on which specific service you are looking at. For his overall rating in the class. Everything I've read about the kid screams Houston Cougar basketball player. Like, I saw in one of the write-ups the phrase good rebounding guard. It wasn't at the top of the scouting report, but my eyes were drawn to good rebounding guard. And before reading anything else, I thought to myself, yeah, he's going to fit in here just fine. Also got high marks for his athleticism, his willingness and ability to take tough shots. Another check mark for what you would want from a guard coming in this program. Really good intangibles too. No question about his motor, competitiveness, work ethic, that kind of thing. Mentioned he plays for Montverde Academy, a long-time elite basketball incubator, plays high-level EYBL basketball on the grassroots circuit as well when he's not playing for Montverde. The only knock I've seen on him is that his size is fine but not elite, which I guess is why he's in that very, very good tier of recruit and not that truly elite tier of recruit. But there are a few paths more well-trodden than Kelvin Sampson, U of H men's basketball, finding a player with the right tools, finding a player with the right work ethic who may be a touch smaller than the ideal size, and then developing that player into a monster in the college game. And I don't have any trouble envisioning that happening here with Mr. Delancey over the next 2 to 3 years. Originally from St. Petersburg, Florida, also took official visits this summer to Florida, Florida State, and Maryland after taking an early June official visit to U of H before he committed to the Cougs last week. I mean, simply put, really a recruit that checks all the boxes, a level of player who can come in and translate to a high level of competition like he's going to face in the Big 12, but also can come with a chip on his shoulder as a really good player, but someone who probably feels like he's as good as the creme de la creme in his class, and we just have a really great track record with that kind of guy. And then that's why I think I'm most excited about the newest Cougar men's basketball commitment, Bobby.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I see is that he's quick, that he's agile, that he can make that kind of quick burst. Capable scorer is something you always like to see from somebody who's going to come in as like a 2 guard, something like that. You mentioned his size, a little bit undersized, but as you said, we've seen Coach Bishop completely change some guys' bodies pretty quickly, and so that is very rarely a concern for me because it does seem like Alan Bishop has those guys on a plan that gets them going pretty quick and allows them to bulk up. So anytime I see size, height, even when you look at height of previous players, like this team has done really well with undersized guys who can bulk up and still remain quick, and I think that is something we've done really well. Like you said, big thing you saw was great rebounder for his size for a guard. Like, that screams Kelvin Sampson, so it's no surprise that that Sampson pursued him as hard as he did. And again, I always tell people look at the offer list. Florida, Maryland, you got LSU, Miami, Mississippi State, Ohio State. Just a great list of schools that have been trying to get this kid. So yeah, super excited to see him on the court.
Glad you mentioned the Alan Bishop strength and conditioning part too. Again, no more well-trodden path. Kelvin Sampson developing guys, and Alan Bishop getting guys physically right for playing basketball for Kelvin Sampson. It's easy to see why this works for all parties.
Yep.
And before we get to our main segment, in the last few weeks since we did one of these, we had some spring sports transfers. We got a couple new assistant coaches coming in for one of the spring sports as well that I'll shoehorn in here. Some golfers maybe playing amateur. I got it right, Bobby said amateur competitions that we'll get to here, which we'll do it all in the transfer roundup. We'll start with Cougar baseball. And this isn't going to be an exhaustive list of every transfer who's come in because this program is essentially rebuilding its roster from scratch. So for the sake of not spending an hour's worth of time listing off and talking about every single player who has come into the baseball program, I'll just highlight a few of the most notable ones that I've seen commit to U of H since we last discussed this topic on this show. I'll start with pitching. Right-handed reliever Juan Vargas is really intriguing to me. He played his most recent season at Texas A&M, played the 2 college seasons prior at Tennessee Tech. In that season at A&M, he had a 4.44 ERA and 26 1/3 innings pitched for the Aggies. He was a reliever, made 20 appearances for that total. Was good enough to pitch semi-regularly, but you could tell from looking at when he pitched and who he pitched against, wasn't a first-choice relief option. That makes sense, but appeared 20 times for one of the better SEC programs. And that plus A&M changing their pitching coach, not really surprising that Vargas left. Had solid swing and miss stuff at A&M, but really, really good swing and miss stuff 2 seasons ago. His last season at Tennessee Tech as a sophomore, he struck out 56, in 42 1/3 innings. And I think this is a bet on whether or not the new staff can harness that stuff. Also a trio of position players that Will Davis is bringing into Cougar baseball, who are all freshmen this past season. Weren't all 3 true full season starters, though one of these guys played a good amount more than the others. But I think all 3 are decent bets to come good for the Cougs as potential full-time starters. We'll mention that trio. Nate Houghton Henley started 26 games this past season as a freshman at Maryland. Had a really impressive .364 batting average, 2 home runs and 18 ribbies, but that was only 88 at-bats. Also caught my eye. He had 15 walks. It was a perfect 6 for 6 on stolen bases as a part-time starter last season as well. I feel like there's a good chance he's your opening day starter at center field. Joins his former Maryland freshman teammate, Franklin Pichardo Jr., who committed earlier this offseason as well. Pichardo also put up intriguing but pretty small sample size numbers playing last season for the Terps. We'll also mention Big 12 to Big 12 transfer here. Xavier Barham played in 25 games last season for West Virginia, very much a Big 12 baseball power. Most of those he came off the bench, but did appear in postseason games against Cal Poly in the Super Regional round, and then in the College World Series in Omaha against Troy and UNC. A big-time recruit in this class, and on a team like West Virginia that's shown themselves to be a serious contender for the Big 12 baseball title really year in, year out at this point, probably is going to be tough for him to break into that lineup specifically. I still like that Will Davis and the new U of H staff are taking a bet on a young guy who was a really good recruit 2 years ago, who's at least good enough to get periodic at-bats as a freshman for one of the better teams in the country and arguably the best team in your conference. And I will mention the most recent trio of that commitment, Garrett Hutchins, who played as a freshman at the Air Force Academy this past spring, originally from DFW. Didn't become a full-time starter until down the stretch in conference play for the Falcons, which isn't super unusual for a freshman, especially not at a service academy, but he did put up really strong numbers once he became a regular starter for the Falcons. OPS to hair under 1,000 with a .376 average, 13 extra base hits and 28 ribbies and only 85 at-bats. I mean, the caveat, the big one is obviously he's going up a level from the Mountain West to the Big 12. Barely walked in his partial season as a starter, which is something I noticed, but I'm really high on someone who showed the things Hutchins showed while dealing with being a first-year student at a service academy, which is a harder day-to-day situation than basically anybody else in college baseball was dealing with at the time. So now we're seeing the roster largely as is. There might be a few ads between now and when the semester starts next month, but you got a pretty good idea of what the Cougar baseball roster for the 2027 spring season is going to look like. Sprinkling of guys from bigger profile programs looking for a bigger role and a fair amount of guys transferring up a level. And you're not going to hit on all those players, but there have been a number of incoming guys we've talked about who I don't have a hard time talking myself into being serious contributors here. And I don't have a hard time seeing what the staff saw in them, if that makes sense, Bobby.
Yeah, I can definitely, like you said, I think there's a lot of guys that aren't proven on the field, but you can see where they have been on the field, they've looked pretty good. A lot of the, like you said, a lot of the recruits going, still going after some guys who were at bigger schools and maybe they just need a new environment, while also maintaining some guys who come from those smaller schools who are looking for the step up. I think that this team, it's going to be really hard to see what they're going to do and kind of preview this team when we get to that in many months, Sam. But I can definitely see where this staff was going, and it feels different than a lot of the recruits that I've kind of seen in the past couple of years, where you're like, I don't really get how they got there. I can see how this coaching staff got there to want to have some of these guys be Houston Cougars, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Gun to my head, I still think this is probably bottom half of the Big 12 when it's all said and done next spring. But I can also talk myself into the conference record being better than it was last spring, and the on-field product just looking better by eye test as well. Also eye-opening that there are a lot of guys who played major roles on this past spring's Cougar baseball team who are playing for bigger name programs now. Kendall Hoffman and Blake Fields at Ole Miss, Caden Cooper at Duke, Riley Jackson, Kentucky, Caleb Kimball at A&M, and that's just to name some of the outgoing transfers. And you had the largest MLB draft class from the program in 7 years from guys who were on that 2026 spring team as well. And yet the on-field product was a team that went 7-21 in Big 12 play. Not hard to see why there was a coaching change, man.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you start seeing that you lose your coach for not performing well, and then you're not getting like poached by smaller schools, like you said, you're getting poached by SEC schools. You're like, if they're good enough to get some kind of money or some kind of scholarship at a SEC school, like it does tell you they were able to find talent. Like that staff could clearly identify talent. The problem was for some reason it just didn't work. I do not understand it.
And it's not even like, I can't believe him. Yeah, Caleb Kimball had a good freshman season.
Yeah.
Kendall Hoffman, we literally on this podcast talked about, man, it's going to really stink when we see Kendall Hoffman after this strong sophomore season probably go to another program and look awesome and just think, man, why couldn't we get things figured out while he was taking the mound for us once a week here? But c'est la vie. And I'll throw this to you, Bobby. We had, I believe, in addition to the women's golf roster and a number of athletes competing in the various amateur with a hard T championships.
You really love leaning into amateur.
That I will throw to you as the golf guy. You know, Bobby, you're the golf guy. I'm just the golf amateur.
Yeah, so we did bring in transfer Jackie Gonzalez Howard over the last couple of weeks. Really excited. She comes from Wingate, maybe not a school that you necessarily think is going to blow your mind or do anything like that, but they went to the NCAA championship semifinals. She had a scoring average, maybe a little high of 75.32, but was a very, very good competitor for Winthrop. Finished 34th nationally in the clipped rankings, in the scoreboard rankings. Also, she played 3 seasons at UT Rio Grande Valley, Texas Pan American. Just a player who I don't know if she's going to come in and necessarily automatically get a spot, but you would think that if you've played there, if you've played long enough as a 5th-year senior, she's definitely going to probably get a couple of good looks at being in the top 5. So lots of really good talent, especially with that may just kind of round out the team and complete it, but overall really excited by what Jackie Gonzalez Howard brings to the table there, Sam.
Yeah, that's kind of what I gathered just looking at her profile there. Like someone who might compete for the 5th spot, veteran leader on a team that's gonna have a lot of new faces. Seem to check those boxes for me.
Yep. So really excited about that. Just another depth piece. And, you don't like athletes getting just, comfortable with, oh yeah, I'm the number 4 here. I can just go ahead and do it. Heck, we saw it this past season with Natalie St. Germain, who was kind of the 3 challenging the 1s and the 2s, and all of that. So really excited bringing her in. And just, again, we talk about this as raising the floor. You may not raise the ceiling all the time, but if you can raise the floor with most sports, you're doing pretty good there. And then there's been a ton of golf action with the amateurs, as you love to say. First off, we will go to the European Amateur Championship. Emily Viestro ties for 31st, which is a pretty big deal. Like, every amateur in Europe wants to play in this tournament. She's going to finish 31st. And then Daniela Campillo Martinez, the transfer from ULM, who we haven't seen in a Cougar hat yet, but she came over with Coach Pollock, and she finished 10th in the entire amateur championship. So really, really good there. You've seen that's a level that we haven't necessarily seen from this program or athletes in this program. So really excited to see what she's going to be able to do there. So yeah, just really excited by those. You also had Zoe McLean-Tatton finishing top 10 at the English Girls Open Championship. So there's another Cougar athlete who is playing international amateur events and is able to finish in the top 10. Maybe not as big as the European Amateur or anything like that, but still really good. She fires back-to-back 71s on the final day, finished top 10. You had Shira Brambila play in the Texas Women's Stroke Play, so she had a really good finish there. So overall, really good to see the athletes out there competing and doing well. That's a sign that your golf program is doing well. The more and more of your athletes you see competing in those amateur championships like that.
Yeah, I would assume the value of those is just during the off season. I mean, I'm sure these are college golf athletes, so they're doing practice rounds and doing the various practice things you'd expect in the sport. But I would assume just having the competition beyond just playing, I don't know, a round with a friend or a round with a coach. Like there's some value to just getting on the course and trying to shoot the lowest round possible.
Competition rounds are way different than non-competition rounds. Just like, when I go out, I will, when I'm going out and just kind of playing by myself, or, out there with my friends, you have a couple of drinks and you're kind of having fun, and yeah, you're playing golf, you're doing great and everything. But if I'm playing in a tournament, you kind of lock in, no drinks, we're here. And it just takes a lot more mentally, and you get to see where you stack up. I think that's one of the most important things that a lot of people don't realize is you just need to see where you are, because you will play golf with people who are better than you, and you'll go, oh, I always thought I was a good fill in the blank. And then you see somebody else come in and you're like, oh, I guess I don't hit the ball very far. Like, I've always considered myself a decent golfer. Like, I'm not the best, right? But I played with a guy who played in college, and he qualified, like Monday qualified for some tournaments. He hit 3-iron. I think it was a 3-iron. It may have been a 2-iron, where I hit driver. And that made me go, oh man, when I go play golf with my dad, I blow it past him. Him and his friends think I hit the ball a long ways. I don't actually hit the ball a long way. So I think there's a lot to it in terms of that, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
No, yeah, totally. That's kind of what I figured.
Yeah, and then on the men's side, just kind of real quick, you had a couple of guys qualify for the U.S. Amateurs, which haven't taken place yet, but you get Chi Chun Chin qualifying, Grant Doggett qualified, Sebastian Gamboa and Wolfgang Glow all qualified for the U.S. Amateur. Big tournament, big deal to qualify for it in the first place. That takes a lot just to do that. And to go out and, Grant Doggett goes out and fires a 67 to qualify. Chi Chun Chin fires a 68. Like, you got to make shots when it matters, and that helps a lot. So
very cool. We'll go back to the bat and ball sports, as we've had some softball transfers come in since we last did this summer transfer roundup, plus some long-awaited additions to the coaching staff that we'll discuss as well. Probably the most eye-opening incoming transfer from this group is outfielder Skylar Brennan, who played last season at Illinois. Brennan played her first D1 season this past spring. She had played the previous 2 seasons where she was a JUCO All-American at Florida Southwestern College. Ultimately led the Illini in total hits, batting average, walks, and multi-hit games. That Illini team she was on wasn't especially good, but if anything, to me, that magnifies her accomplishments because by mid-season, probably pretty apparent that she was the best hitter in that lineup. She was probably pitched around at least some and still put up really strong numbers for a first Division I season. The staff also brought in a pair of position players originally from California who didn't play that much, or in one case at all, in their first college seasons. Brianna Hinson comes in after featuring sparingly in her freshman season at Texas Tech, which that's not really a red flag to me, as that team has gone pretty portal heavy in their roster building with proven players from other D1 programs. I'm willing to take a swing on a player who was recruited and judged to be worthy of a roster spot on one of the sport's preeminent powers at this point, as much as it's painful for me to say it about that black and red school in Lubbock. That's very much what they are in the softball space. Also, you had Nina Payton Johnson come in after not playing her first college season at Cal, but was a pretty big time recruit coming out of the Los Angeles area. She should have 4 more years to play here as well. Also, the staff added in pitching as well, specifically Kaylee Gayton, who played her freshman season at Indiana State. She prepped at Katy, where she was one of the standout pitchers in Texas. Her freshman numbers at Indiana State didn't wow me at first, but it's growing on me. She threw 117 innings with a 4 ERA this past season, was only fractionally worse than Indiana State's other regular starting pitcher. It was basically her and that one pitcher threw like 95% of their innings, despite being 4 years younger than said teammate. So I can see her being an upgrade over some of the pitchers you ran out last season, but I will also admit that I'm waiting on an incoming pitcher transfer who really wows me and who I could see coming in. And I don't have to talk myself into them being considerably better than any Cougar pitcher of the past couple seasons. And with a lot of players already committed here later in the summer, it's harder to envision that player coming in, but nothing positive to take away from these newest additions to the roster as well.
Yeah, I think for me, the pitching will always be a big giant question mark until I see that pitcher who comes in from a school that they were leaving to get a better opportunity, but they still had a 2 ERA. I think now as I've seen more and more happen with the portal and things like that, the thing I'm noticing is it really seems like pitching is like offensive line in football. Like,
oh yeah,
it's gonna cost you a lot of money, and there's no saying that it's gonna work even in the first place. They're at a premium, and it's really hard to find them, which it shouldn't be a shock considering pitching is so important in softball. It just does baffle how we just haven't been able to find even one. I do think that, like you said, all the reasons that you said with Kaylee Gatton, that I do believe that there's a chance and maybe you can come in and make her a little bit better. But overall, still, like you said, a little worried that I haven't seen that pitcher that makes me get super excited about them coming in. But I'm trying to give this staff the same grace that I'm giving the baseball staff in terms of, okay, I can see how you got there in terms of getting this player, because a lot of the baseball recruits have been like, oh, guy throws innings, he gets a lot of strikeouts, he doesn't walk players, but man, his ERA is 5. And I'm giving that a little bit of grace, going, okay, maybe they'll teach him to avoid bats a little bit more. I'm kind of hoping the same thing with softball. It's just so much harder to teach them how to avoid getting squared up than it is in baseball.
And as I alluded to, we had some additions to Chrissy Schoonmaker's softball staff as well. The big one we were waiting on was the pitching coach after the program parted ways with Nairi White following a pretty disastrous 2026 pitching season. And last week, we found out that Long Beach State assistant Shelby Miller, not to be confused with Cougar softball alumna and past Oscar winner Shelby Miller, would be taking the job. Miller oversaw Long Beach staff's ERA going down a full point in her one season there, but probably the resume item that excites me the most was in her previous stop, which was 4 years at Fresno State. Miller coached 2 different Mountain West Pitchers of the Year in her last 2 years there, and in her final season, the Bulldogs led the Mountain West to her 32nd nationally in team ERA. We've both stated our concerns, or maybe to say it more accurate, our questions about the pitchers on the roster, but no offense to Nairi White, Miller is clearly more qualified for the position than somebody who'd never coached college softball prior to last season. We also had the announcement that Ben Buchner would be joining the staff as the hitting coach as well. Most recently, Buchner was the hitting coach for 3 seasons at the University of Incarnate Word, which just had its 2 best hitting seasons in program history. Over this period, UIW hitters under Buchner rewrote the program offensive record book in most key categories, and he also coached 3-time Southland Conference Player of the Year, Victoria Altamirano. Bill Buchner also coached college baseball at Pacific and Santa Rosa Junior College, which this was a really cool random Cougar connection. At Santa Rosa, he coached, I'll say it, the best hitter of Todd Whitting's time at U of H, Jake Shiner, who played for Buchner at Santa Rosa. So an interesting path here to coaching college softball. And in my opinion, two very, and they might be underselling it, but 2 very credible hires. You don't love that you replace 2/3 of the original assistants on staff after 1 season, but I also think it's unreasonable to demand 100% continuity when the on-field results were as poor as they were last season.
Yeah, I like you said, it is concerning that you go, oh man, you missed on the staff that much, and it's not like they were hired away either. I think something that caught my eye that I really liked was when Shelby Miller joined Cal. One of the things they said was that she's an absolute game changer when it comes to pitching analytics and technology, and I really, really like that. Right? That's really exciting to see somebody who's going to come in and actually dive into the numbers and look at those kind of things as well. So really excited about Shelby Miller. Like you said, a little bit different for a hitting coach to go from baseball to softball, and you hope that his experience in softball or his experience in baseball can translate over, and he's shown it has a little bit, or not a little bit, but at Incarnate Word. So yeah, super excited about these 2, and I think I'm more excited about this staff than I was the original staff. It really seems like Coach Studemaker was able to actually lock in and go, all right, these are the people I want, and got people they want, rather than kind of late in the hire cycle and go, oh man, yeah, I'll take you, you know.
We'll just say I just saw our hitting coach got hired by Texas Tech. Jeff Cottrell. That's why he's no longer on staff. So you can take that as an endorsement. But you can take that as an endorsement, honestly. Like I literally just found that out in the last 30 seconds. So you could say like, hey, like this guy ended up getting hired by one of the best 2 or 3 programs in the sport right now. It's like, all right.
And I would say,
you're not going to bid head to head with them.
The problem.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I would say hitting wasn't the problem. It wasn't like I was, clamoring for him to be replaced.
No, that's true. Quickly, we got 2 additions to the Cougar tennis roster for the coming season as well. Both will be coming as incoming freshmen for the fall season. Both come from the international ranks. Don't have a ton on either of them. I was able to find with some digging. The first one I'll mention, Adriana Michiavoavi, is a French junior. Really intriguing international background from what I found out. She represented Madagascar through ancestry at the Billie Jean King Cup, which is basically the World Cup of women's tennis. Madagascar won their group. They were previously at the bottom of the African tennis pyramid, but they did well, and she was a big part of that and got good international experience playing in the Billie Jean King Cup, played French club tennis since then. And we also had Vladislava Razina from Minsk, Belarus. She was a 2-time Belarusian singles and doubles champion. I noticed her junior tennis profile that she was born in 2009, which in addition to making me feel old as dirt, I think is good news for her long-term development. Obviously, the 5-5 tennis specifically is probably the worst culprit. It's not U of H tennis, but college tennis broadly, bringing in 22 or 23-year-olds who have spent the last 5 or 6 seasons playing some old professional tennis. Like, oh, it's a freshman. It's like, yeah, the UT men's like SEC freshman of the year was a guy playing the previous summer on like the European tour. Man, this feels like it's going against the spirit of it. And obviously that's going to be less of a thing going forward, but not in effect necessarily with this class. But I still think with Razina specifically, you're going to see maybe the long-term benefits of bringing in somebody who's going to develop a lot physically from now when she's 18 to 21 or 22, ideally later in her Cougar career. And at this point, really the only question I have with the roster, you've brought in 3 players now. Coach Zaliva has retained the 4 that could have possibly had eligibility to return. So the only question for me is, you signed a freshman, the previous staff, Alice Stevens. She was a Western Australian junior. She has not resurfaced as signing with Oklahoma State, so I'll be curious if she's going to be still playing American college tennis with the new staff. If so, that's 8 players. That's your roster pretty much settled. If not, then potentially maybe you're adding someone, whether it's another international freshman or maybe someone in the portal here before the fall semester starts, and probably getting your 8-player roster there. So I think the potential for this team, obviously it's late July. You don't really know that much other than generally having an idea about the 4 returning players. I don't know if you're going to be as deep as you were last season. I think one of the strengths of last year's team was having very good veteran players on 5 and 6. I think you'll be a bit younger in courts 5 and 6 this coming season, just based on the roster makeup. But I still think that could have long-term positive potential. I still think I would rather that than loading up on the oldest roster possible, and then in a year or two, you're just like, oh no, we have to go get an entire rest of the roster. If you can build a roster with some class balance, which this one seems to have, I think that's the goal. And yeah, I think now we have a roster mostly built. Very excited for Valeria Zaliva's first tennis team here, and yeah, just know what the Cougs have there.
Yeah, super excited to see what they can do in the spring.
So we'll get to our main segment tonight. This is our last true off-season episode, as I mentioned at the top. Everything from here going to the month of August will be some kind of look ahead, whether that's our annual season opener bowl prediction show that co-host emeritus Dustin will be joining us for, or the various previews that we will be doing heading into football and the Cougar fall sports seasons. Not that we'll never talk about the sports that finished, but we figured this would be a good way to take one last extended trip down memory lane and do so in a way that wouldn't be absurdly time consuming. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of the 3 calendar sports seasons. So that's fall, football, soccer, volleyball; winter, which is the basketball, swimming and diving, and indoor track; and then spring, which is baseball, softball, outdoor track, men's and women's golf, and tennis. Look at each of those 3 kind of calendar seasons that I just mentioned, and Bobby and I will each give our personal high and low points from having covered, watched, experienced those seasons. And we kept this very loose, that the high and low points could be an individual game, a larger accomplishment from an athlete, a series of games, just one particular season that we especially enjoyed. And the criteria are purely subjective to how we felt about them, both from the highs and the lows. This isn't going to be a contest of, oh, Bobby and I find the most significant postseason game. There might be postseason games in there, but it was purely subjective to how we felt about experiencing it in real time. So we're going to go from least to most recent in terms of when these happened, and start off with the Cougar fall sports season from the latter portion of last calendar year. Bobby, what were your high and low points of the Cougar fall season this past year?
Yeah, so my high point was, this is going to sound really weird, but it was the Colorado football game. And the reason why I say that is, heading into the season, my goal, as I went through the schedule, I was like, yeah, 6 wins is definitely doable here. 7, I could really see us getting to 7. And the game where I think I said quite a bit was where we were going to see what this team was that Colorado game. That was going to be your first real test after SFA and versus Rice. And you look at those scores, and yeah, sure, the SFA game, you won 27-0, but it didn't feel like you were winning that game 27-0 fairly early on. Like, it took you multiple possessions to go down and get that first touchdown. Your second one was a field goal. You just kind of stalled out. And then you kind of got that second touchdown late in the first half to make it 17-0. So yeah, you were supposed to win that game, but you were kind of hoping you won it by more than that. The Rice game, you go out and you absolutely blew the doors off of them. But that Colorado game, the way you came out and you just dominated Colorado, you kind of went, oh, this team could be better than I thought. Now, did they follow it up with kind of a stinker at Oregon State the next week? Yeah, sure. But that Colorado game just really kind of set me up for the rest of the football season by going, oh, this is our first real test, and oh, we look really good. Like, this offense looks like it's going to be substantially better than it was the year before, which, let's be honest, it was hard to be worse than you were the year before. So for me, that was the highlight. There were some bigger moments, like you said, that I could probably point to. Winning the game versus LSU, the bowl game, being there for that was a ton of fun. Beating Baylor. There's a lot of other moments, but the one that kind of set me up for the rest of the fall was that Colorado win. So that's going to be my positive. And then really, I had a hard time finding a negative, like an individual negative. So I kind of went with a team, and it was volleyball, and not even just volleyball season in general, just the way they lost a lot of games. Like, there were games where you would just or matches. There were inside those matches, there were just so many games where one service error just would kill you. Like, there was just a little bit of anxiety just watching us serve every single time I was able to put the volleyball team on the TV. Like, you're just kind of watching it going, okay, we're up 2. There's a service error. We're up 1, and now they go on a little rally, and we lost by 2. Like, it was just that a lot this past season with volleyball. And look, I'm not trying to, punch down to the volleyball team or do anything like that. Like, if it's frustrating for me, it's certainly frustrating 100 times for Coach Rare, but and that team. But that was kind of the low point for me, was watching just every time you put on volleyball, they would look good enough to win matches, because they just played everybody so close, except for like a couple of times when they played like Kentucky, number 3 in the country, things like that. But throughout Big 12 play, you just saw them almost win lots of sets, and that can lead to wins, and it wasn't like you were getting out talented. You were just shooting yourself in the foot by your service errors and things like that.
I really like your Colorado pick for the high point, because yes, there were certainly, if you take the football season in totality, there were more memorable wins there. But that was the moment where I also thought to myself, I don't think I had at that point, like, oh, we're going to win 10 games. I was just like, okay, I could see this team. Like, it was nice to beat Rice. It was nice to beat SFA. But it was just like, okay, this team could win 6, 7, 8 games. This team can be noticeably improved on the previous season. Like, you have an actual, and Colorado didn't end up being very good, but at the time, it was
you
like,
thought
okay,
they might be.
And I mean, truthfully, the first time ever that U of H handled a Big 12 opponent since joining the conference in football at home. I mean, think about it, like the 2 wins from Holgerson's year. One of them was a Hail Mary against West Virginia. And yeah, that was the only home win out of that group in Big 12 play. 2024, you did at times really run TCU off the field. That game you were at in Fort Worth, but even that one, TCU got back in it. You wouldn't call that one a blowout necessarily. That was the first time you really ran a Big 12 team off the field. And it was just immensely satisfying, even if Colorado ended up being that good. Like, it was definitely a proof of concept win.
Yeah, and we talk about like the Big 12 wins and things like that. Where I've always kind of compared us to during this transition into Big 12 play is, I want to be ahead of UCF and I want to be ahead of Cincinnati. Like, BYU has their financials, but like, their financial benefits when they came in with us. But I always want to be tracking ahead of those guys. And then when Colorado comes in, they had all that Pac-12 money and former Big 12 team. Like, they shouldn't have been. At this point, it didn't feel
they
like
were more advantaged than us. Yeah, you could say it.
Yeah.
They were more advantaged than us. Yeah,
Absolutely. And so to go in and, like you called it, a proof of concept win is exactly what that one felt like. And yes, like I said, maybe I took a little bit of liberties with like the high point or the thing I liked the most. But I remember watching that Colorado game going, halfway through it, I was like, oh, this team, like, again, like you said, not 10 wins, but 7 was definitely like, oh, we're hitting 7 now, right? Like, after that game, I really had no doubt we were going bowling. And Colorado wasn't the best team in the world, is what it ended up being. But going into that game, it was it got Friday night attention. Like, it was the game on Friday night. Like, people thought it was going to at least be a game. So really, that was just one of the more memorable moments for me in the fall.
I'm glad you picked that one also, because I went pretty basic with my fall high point. I had a few good ones to choose from there, but I went with the Texas Bowl win over LSU. As a far out of town Coug at this point in my life, getting to see that one in person with my dad at NRG was a blast. Whatever you want to say about LSU being a depleted roster and what non-playoff bowl games mean these days, being there in person with a large Cougar contingent, that night felt like a celebration of a team that made us all believe in this program again and exceeded all reasonable expectations before the season. You saw a resilient team bounce back from LSU taking the game's opening kick to the house for a touchdown, largely dominated proceedings after that point. One of Connor Wigman's best games of his 2025 season, threw for 4 touchdowns, ran for another, but most importantly, played mistake-free football in a way that he hadn't necessarily done all of the time last season. You saw Connor Wigman at his best. Because it was 2025 Cougar football, the team did find a way to make it at least a little interesting at the end. I mean, even though the final score was technically a 3-point margin, I don't believe anyone who watched that game, whether it was in person or on TV, would have left with any conclusion, but U of H was the better team on that night. You could tell for all the guys in the field in red and white that finishing that season strong and getting that 10th win really meant something. And I've seen more talented, I've seen more dominant teams put on that U of H jersey, but that was one of the toughest teams we ever saw. And I'm so happy I got to see them get that 10th and final win in person. That's why I picked him here. Pretty similar to you on the low point. I debated doing actually exactly what you did and just making this the entire 2025 Cougar volleyball season, but I went a little more specific with my answer. I'm picking the 3-2 loss to Utah early in conference play last season. To that point in the year, U of H was 1-3 in Big 12 play, but honestly, really weren't in a bad spot. The 3 Big 12 losses were all on the road to teams you didn't really expect to beat. TCU and Baylor and Colorado, who all ended up winning 20-plus matches and all went to the NCAAs as at-large teams. And Utah was a good team, and you were on the road in Salt Lake City. Utah ended up making the NCAAs as well, but the Cougs opened the match by winning the first 2 sets, and from there, all you had to do was win one of the remaining 3 possible sets, and you could have gotten a really valuable road win and just couldn't do it, and ultimately dropped a 5-setter. And I picked this match specifically because it also felt like a turning point, I guess in a negative way. And it's impossible to say how the season goes differently if you find a way to get one of those remaining sets and win in Utah, but sports can be so confidence-based. And if you go out and beat a good opponent on the road, I don't think it's an insane stretch to say that the rest of the season could go somewhat differently if you end up finding out, a way to close Utah in this game. I remember following along live with this match and just feeling like a gut punch, seeing that you weren't able to close out a 2-0 lead. And unfortunately, as you alluded to, this would not be the last Big 12 match that the Cougs couldn't close out from some level of early lead in what ended up being your worst volleyball season in a while. We'll move to winter sports here. Bobby, what were your personal high and low points from the Cougar winter sports season?
I'll be honest, there was not many low points for me to really point out. I was able to find one, and we'll see what you think about it. But high points, there were a couple, like some indoor track stuff really got me. But I think the thing that got me most excited, like jump out of my seat, was the game-winning buzzer-beating 3 that women's basketball had against Cincinnati to get their first Big 12 win under Coach Mitchell. For no other reason than it kind of felt like this team deserved it a little bit. You had some close games, but you could see them really putting in. Like sometimes you see a team that's getting beat like that kind of give up. And you hate to use that phrase that they quit on their coach, but you never saw that from this team. And that was just, you saw how excited everybody was. You saw the videos of them singing the fight song, and just it happened on alumni day too, so you saw all the past Cougs there, just waving to the crowd, getting all that, celebrating with the team. It really felt like, you pulled an upset off at homecoming. It's really that was really exciting to see them win at home, get that win. Didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of their season. Absolutely not. Like, it didn't suddenly make them like, oh man, look, they went off and rallied. But you could see it was very relaxing, I guess you could say, for Coach Mitchell in there. Like, you could see a little bit of the tension kind of hit off, and he was like, okay, what we're doing does actually work a little bit. And so it was nice to see the hard work that it's clear that staff was putting into the team actually pay off. So that was that's my high point. Just, I was really excited for that team. I love the women's basketball team, just from when we were in school, being one of like 5 students who would go, and 5 might be giving us a little bit too much credit as students, and watching those teams. And then, like I said, seeing the alumni there for that game, that's super fun. That just, those things, I don't understand why sometimes coaches don't want past players around their program all the time. And it's just like, this is such an easy win to get people excited, like, and not fans, but if you get the alumni to come back and they're having a good time at the games, you just have people, and you have advisors and mentors for the players on the team. I can't mentor a women's basketball player because I've never played collegiate women's basketball, right? It's a free resource that you can use, and that the former players are probably really excited to do, right? So, yeah, it was cool seeing it happen on Alumni Day. It was cool seeing all the alumni there and to see them win that game. And then for me, a low point in the winter was probably the loss at Fog Allen. That, man, you were leading that game 27-20, and then at halftime you were down 31-27, and then they just continued to pull away. And the margin, you're on Big Monday, so you're on national TV. You've just lost 2 on a national game at Arizona, and then you lost at ESPN, on ESPN, at Iowa State, both games that you played pretty close. And then you could just see the team was tired, but that 13-point margin just didn't even feel like it is indicative of what that game actually was. If, like, going back to look, I was like, oh yeah, we only lost by 13. In my mind, we lost that game by 20, and it was over with 8 minutes left to go in that game. It just never felt good. That was, like I said, not a ton of low moments unless you are really going through women's basketball and being like, oh man, they got absolutely wrecked there. And it's like, yeah, we kind of expected that. I don't know if I expected a 13-point loss at Fog Allen where you just look that bad out of the basketball team.
I like the symmetry of this. My winter high point is I'm going with the men's basketball win in the Big 12 championship semis over Kansas.
Yeah.
For my pick. It was vintage Houston Cougar men's basketball, and that this team metaphorically punched the Kansas Jayhawks in their mouths in the opening minutes of this basketball game. And just as it looked like at the end of the first half, they might have some life in them, not too dissimilar to how they kind of came roaring back at Fog Allen, did the opposite of what you did in Lawrence. Cougs fully put this game on ice with a 22-2 run from the very end of the first half to the first 7 minutes of the second. This was one of the most dominant defensive performances I've ever seen from this program in any season against a high-level opponent. I'd forgotten this, Bobby. Kansas barely made above 20% of their 2-pointers that night.
It was crazy.
They were 7 of 34 in 2-pointers. That's the kind of defensive night you have in a home bye game in November or December, not against the University of Kansas's basketball team. You know? Future NBA draft pick Darren Peterson goes 3 for 11 from the field. Future top-rated transfer Flory Badunga went 1 for 4 from the field. Just an absolute butt-kicking in a way that we've gotten very spoiled for around these parts, but I think one we all very much appreciated.
Yep. Yeah, no, it wasn't, it wasn't that I wasn't going to choose that. There were a lot of options, but yeah, it's hard for me to argue that one. Like, it wasn't the thing for me because I think I was disappointed that we lost the championship game. But yeah, man, that game, when you go back and you look at some of those stats and you go back and you just kind of go through the play-by-play, you're like, oh man. And like Shanak came out and was like, yeah, see, this is why I was a 5-star. Don't forget, this is why I'm going to get drafted by the NBA here.
This game also meant the Cougs made their 3rd Big 12 championship game appearance in as many seasons in the conference, and that accomplishment will rightly get overlooked given all of the other things that this program has done since joining the Big 12. But that's a strong overlooked one for me because this team has never gone into the Big 12 tournament with any real serious NCAA stakes. And against quality competition, you've made a run to the championship at every opportunity you've had. I mean, there were definitely other good potential picks from the men's basketball season that was, but when we kind of agreed on this prompt, this was the one that immediately jumped to mind when I got to the winter sports season. My low point also, there weren't that many of these really for a lot of the reasons you said, but I landed on the women's basketball regular season finale against UCF. a 72-62 home loss. This isn't any larger statement on your now second-year head coach Matthew Mitchell and the program. They've had a really dramatic roster makeover since the season ended, and both of us are really excited for that program to start their season here in a few months. But against a UCF team that was one of the worst in the Big 12 last season, ultimately fired their head coach, you lost, and you lost by being pretty clearly second best. The game followed a pretty common script for last year's team, close early. Cougs actually led by 2 going into the locker room at the half. Just not enough firepower offensively. UCF outscored the Cougs 36-24 over the game's final 2 quarters. And I'm not saying this game radically changed how I felt about last season's team. They were sitting on 1 Big 12 win going into the game, so certainly by that point, kind of knew what they were. But I remember previewing that game and hoping maybe this group can go out on a high note, and a lot of these players last ever home U of H game. Maybe we can find that second win in a tough season, and you just didn't really come close to that. I remember that was a pretty big bummer, even if it's not a loss that means a whole bunch to me in the grand scheme of things. Honorable mention, Sweet 16 loss to Illinois. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of the obvious pick, but I forced myself to think a little harder on it. It's not the fact that you lost to Illinois. It's not that you lost. It's that you lost them in a way that you just really weren't competitive in the second half. We kept talking to ourselves, okay, they're going to make this run. They're going to make this run. Like, there's no way
never happened.
The Cougars can't make some baskets, and yeah, just never happened.
Just didn't happen. I will defend the not that they need defending the women's basketball team. I thought they looked really good in the BYU Big 12 championship.
They did.
That game's a 10-point game, and I don't think it was.
It was a lot closer to the final indicate. I watched nearly all that one live. It was a lot closer.
Me too.
Like you said, not a team that ever quit on the season. I would never accuse them of such.
No, but that is a good answer. You did just get absolutely wrecked by UCF, and you probably shouldn't have gotten wrecked that badly by UCF.
So close here with the spring season. Going into this, as we always do for these kind of segments, we do not explicitly tell each other what we picked, because part of the fun of doing this is seeing how you approached it, seeing how I approached it. But I would say both of us have a pretty good idea what our high points are going to be for the spring Cougar sports season. But Bobby, tell me your spring high and low points.
Yeah, man, the high point is absolutely going to be women's golf. Almost or qualifying for the NCAA championships. I almost went with winning the Big 12, but I think that was really exciting as well. But qualifying for the NCAA championships for the first time in program history is a pretty obvious winner there for me. I will give just because I want to, I'm going to give an honorable mention to baseball beating Alabama in Frisco. Not because the game was magnificent or anything else, but what a great moment it was for me personally, getting to go to the game, watching Cougar baseball, watching a win, and it was like a perfect spring day.
Alabama baseball is really good this year. That was a really good win, though, dude. Yeah. I think they went to. I'm checking this. I think they went to Omaha this year.
But like, putting all that aside, for me, it was just a great personal day, because like I went to work, I did the work thing, and like it was just a beautiful day, and I got to watch baseball, and the Cougs won. So like that's just my honorable mention. That's a personal highlight for me this past year. That was something I really enjoyed. So just wanted to shout that out there. And then for me, the low point and the thing that was probably most disappointing was track and field's performance at nationals. Not scoring a point at all. Not that I thought we were going to like compete for a national championship, but getting no points, dropping the baton in the 4x4, not getting anything out of it. That is probably the low point for me. Just kind of disappointing there. I would have loved to have seen at least some points. And I think when we previewed it, and when you did such an amazing job previewing it, that we even discussed like, yeah, they're probably not going to win the championship. But then as we went through like prelims and stuff, we were kind of like, oh, okay, this is going to be pretty good. And after some Big 12 performances, it just didn't translate. And that was probably a low point for me for the spring.
Won't be a surprise to you, certainly, or the listeners, but I'm going to pick the spring 2026 Cougar tennis season as my high point, acknowledging off the top that by purely objective metrics, the women's golf team having the season they had, their best performance ever by far at a Big 12 championship, and following that up with qualifying for the NCAA championships for the first time in program history, something I enjoyed tremendously. I would argue best all-around accomplishment of the 25-26 season that was, for the history it made, all of that. Like, you cannot say enough good things about what now former head coach Lydia Laspria and the young women in that program did. Even though this tennis season ended with missing that long-awaited return to the NCAA postseason, it was an incredible season to follow because despite doing this podcast now, at the end of our 11th season, we'd never seen Cougar tennis really be any good in any of the prior seasons. In the American Conference, you weren't a bad American team, but one clearly well behind that league's power programs in the previous 2 seasons of the Big 12. No need to mince words. You won a total of 1 match that kind of said it all. To see this team not just beat quality opponents like you did in wins over Utah and BYU, but also really treat the bottom end of this conference like easy wins after very recently yourself being that easy win, it was a sight for sore eyes. You had so many first ever Big 12 road conference win, first road conference win of any kind in almost 4 years. First, I think, true road win of any kind in like 3 years. Highest ranked wins in a decade, highest ranking by the ITA in the same amount of time. You had Valeria Croatina and Sophie Schouten having incredibly dominant single seasons, plus Sophie earning Big 12 all-conference doubles honors. I believe the first all-conference honors the program's had in the Big 12, along with Gems Doazagululi. Sometimes you can feel when a team is about to have a breakout season. I went in person to last spring season opener at UC Riverside, and I can tell you from 5 minutes of talking to Coach Cat and seeing that group's confidence warming up, seeing their confidence taking the court, this wasn't going to be a Cougar tennis season like any of the ones we had covered previously since doing this pod. So hate that the season didn't end with the team getting a well-deserved trip to the NCAA postseason, but now a few months removed from that heartbreak, it doesn't really take that much away from how much I enjoyed watching that team compete and covering them this season. My spring low point, I mean, you could just answer this one, the baseball and softball seasons. It wouldn't be the wrong answer, but I'll go
correct.
I'll go a little more specific for my answer here and say my spring low point was the baseball team getting swept at home in early April by BYU. I mean, you were coming into that series 3-9 in Big 12 play, so not like the season wasn't already kind of going off the rails, but you were coming off a surprising road series win in Lubbock over Tech, the program's first such series win in, I believe, over 40 years. So there was still a chance with a series win or a sweep over a not very good BYU team to recover from that poor start to conference play. And you didn't just lose to BYU. You got swept and scored a combined 5 runs in 27 innings of baseball against a BYU pitching staff that statistically was one of the worst in the Big 12. I knew once we agreed to doing this segment that my answer to the spring low point was going to come from the baseball or softball seasons. And so I picked this one because it embodied what made the past baseball season so frustrating. Bobby, I mean, and this was at home too. If you take out that non-conference sweep of a horribly outmatched Arkansas Pine Bluff team, this team was 8-17 in home games at Schrader Park. Like, even if you're a bad Big 12 team, you should at least be somewhere in spitting distance of 500 in your home games, and you weren't even close. I mean, I never expected a Big 12 contender from the word go, but that this team was good enough to beat some seriously good opponents. The Bama game you were at, you beat a team that went to fucking Omaha. You beat UT in the midweek. You beat a good Wake Forest team in your first series of the season. But, I mean, pretty well established here. It was not a good team at home and lost games they had no business losing, which is embodied no better by that sweep at the hands of BYU. I will little palate cleanser, so we're not ending on my spring low point here. I wanted to give an honorable mention since we did mention, I think your answer is very fair about not getting any points at NCAA Outdoors. We'll say I really enjoyed seeing the Cougar men's track and field team finishing third at Big 12 Outdoors. Obviously, most challenging NCAA postseason in a while, but I don't want that to entirely overshadow a strong performance in the conference postseason in a league with a lot of quality track and field programs. That's your palate cleanser, the Cougar men finishing third at Big 12 Outdoor Championships.
Hey, I love it, man. I love it. So
that's the season, man. I mean, one of the really enjoyable things about doing a show like ours where you can cover the entire sports offering versus, I don't know, the highest 2 profile teams is that you have so many chances to see athletes and teams representing our university do really cool stuff, which we got a chance to do a little reminiscing on here tonight, which I really enjoyed. And even those low points have value, because when those teams come good in the future, you can still remember the previous challenges and heartaches, and that kind of amplifies the good times. And there will be good times someday, Bobby. I will tell myself that until I drive myself insane.
You know, one of the running jokes is that we've always had, you, me, podcast host emeritus, Bill, who you've heard, our group of friends, is if you wanted it easy, you could wear burnt orange. And so there is something about watching the teams rise from the ashes like basketball, like men's basketball has. So
55 episodes down, Bobby. How about we come back next week and do a 12th season of the show?
Hey, man, I'm down. I'm totally in. So I'm excited for it, man.
I was on pins and needles about that.
Could you imagine if I was like, actually, Sam, I've been meaning to talk to you, like right here.
The opposite of quiet quitting.
So
I can still edit it to make you appear very unflattering in some way. You'd be trusting me there. Sorry.
No.
Take us home.
No. So that is it for this season of the Scott and Holman podcast. We want to thank you guys so much for listening. We love doing it. If for no other reason than we get to talk to each other about nonsense. And by nonsense, I mean Cougar sports, which is what we normally talk to each other about anyways. So we want to thank you guys so much for joining us and coming along for the ride. We hope you have enjoyed this season. We will be back next week with a surprise guest who's not really a surprise, because I'm pretty sure Sam mentioned it early on in the episode, talking about the season premiere next week. So super excited about that. We're really excited to continue doing it. And if you got any feedback for us, you can find us on social media at SH Podcast. If you are not on Twitter and you want to go to Blue Sky, you can find us at podcast.bsky.social. And if for some reason none of that works for you, you hate that, you want to use email, you can find us at Gmail, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can email us there. And if you really want us to pay attention to you, or you want to talk about sponsorship opportunities, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/shpodcast. Or if you just want to give us $5 a month for some premium content throughout the season, you can look forward to that as well. So thank you so much again for allowing Sam and I to fill up your car with with the sounds of our voices. Hopefully we can get them a little bit better. But in all seriousness, thank you guys so much for listening. And Sam, what do we always say here, buddy?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!